life, basketball, John Wooden, Steph Curry, Neil Young, Jerry Garcia, and way more, was one of the 50 greatest players in NBA history, a true American treasure, Bill Walton. All right. Joey Ramone said, hey ho, let's go. And man, are we going to go. Am I ever glad you've decided to join us for this episode of Legends and Losers. Our guest today is none other than American icon, basketball legend, Bill Walton. And man, it is fantastic. If you're new to Legends and Losers, I want to thank you for joining us. If you're a regular listener, all I can tell you is there's no excuse for that. But I do appreciate you very much. All of us here at Legends and Losers do. Now, we are not your typical show. On your typical show, it is an interview paradigm, and you've got a host with pre-prepared guests and a narrative, or pre-prepared questions and a narrative they're trying to drive, and you have a guest who's been media trained, typically has their talking points, and what you and I hear on our traditional television, radio, or even magazine interview is essentially the host's pre-configured narrative colliding with the guest's pre-configured talking points, and it ends up being at least in my opinion, a very unsatisfying conversation. That's not what happens here on Legends and Losers. Our objective is to unpack what it takes to really design a legendary business and a legendary life, and to try to have a conversation that is authentic as possible, like two people sitting down over a coffee or beer, really getting into it. And what we're really trying to do is, I believe one conversation could change your life. And so we're trying to catch lightning in a bottle on Legends and Losers with our guests. And man, did we do it with Bill Walton. Now, quickly, before we get to Bill, we have a new mini book coming out, myself and the incredibly talented Heather Clancy, and the book's called Niche Down. So if Play Bigger was all about how to start a company that becomes the next Facebook or Google, Niche Down is all about how a solopreneur, how you in your career, or a small local, small E entrepreneur business can design their own niche and do legendary things in their local or regional market. And so that's what Niche Down is all about. If you would like a copy of the teaser for Niche Book, think of it as a kind of a white paper, then why don't you send us why don't you write us a review on iTunes or wherever else you enjoy podcasts. Take a copy of that review, email it to blackhole@legendsandlosers.com, and we will send you a white paper teaser for the new book Niche Down coming out later in 2018. The other thing I wanted to tell you about, I had a conversation the other day with my buddy Jordan Harbinger, and he is the former host of one of the most popular podcasts in the world called The Art of Charm. And Jordan was kind enough to have me on Art of Charm just around the holiday season. And he has left The Art of Charm and has launched his own show. And we're going to be having Jordan on Legends and Losers in the near future. So I'd encourage you to check out the new Jordan Harbinger show wherever you check out podcasts. All right, Bill Walton. Well, Bill's been in my life for the last 6 to 9 months or so, and having him in my life has been the most unexpected, wonderful, and crazy gift you could possibly imagine. Generally, I've met a lot of celebrities, a lot of athletes, and I'm not really in a big hurry to meet these folks, candidly. And the reason for that is if I love them and they don't turn out to be that great in person, then it's a bummer. And I would rather sort of keep them in my mind than meet them and be disappointed. Meeting Bill Walton, to say it was the furthest thing from a disappointment would be a massive understatement. Bill Walton, the only thing taller than Bill or bigger than Bill's, I think his official height is listed at 6'11". When he walks in the room, he's in the room from a long way away. His heart is as big as he is, and I think bigger. He's one of the most affable, genuine, generous, open, thoughtful, and funny folks I've ever met. And it's just a miracle having him in my life, and it's very, very cool. We met last summer in San Diego. I was there for a speaking event. If you recall, if you're a regular listener, you know last year I did a speaking tour with the folks at Oracle NetSuite. And in some of the cities, like in San Diego, the NetSuite folks brought in a big time athlete. And so in the case of San Diego, I was the opening act. And of course, Bill Walton was the closing act. And after the event, we had an opportunity to have dinner. Jason Maynard, the head of marketing and strategy for NetSuite, and I are colleagues, longtime friends, and he and I and Bill had dinner, and we just had a wonderful connection. Bill was kind enough after that to send me an autographed copy of his book and a gigantic stack of photographs of him playing, of him with Coach Wooden, of him on the cover of Sports Illustrated, even as a college player. I mean, a stack of memorabilia that was mind-blowing, and everyone was autographed. And the kind words he said to me in autographing his book were incredibly touching. And so I just now have Bill Walton in my life. I also need to thank Lane Sobel from NetSuite. Lane, I love you. You're awesome. Thanks for the tour, and thanks for connecting me with Bill. And so I've just had this fun relationship with Bill over email. And Bill is an Emmy Award-winning sportscaster on ESPN, and he's been kind enough to shout out to me and underscore the work of our book Play Bigger multiple times on national TV. And when he does it, I can't even believe that during the middle of a basketball game, he's telling people about Play Bigger and category design and all the good stuff. It's just incredible. You know, this is a man who gives without expectation of receiving something back and is a true American treasure. So let me give you a bit of his background. When he was in high school, he went on this incredible run where between high school and college, the teams that Bill was on won 88 straight games. When he made it to UCLA under Coach John Wooden, who was his hero, Bill won 2 national championships. And the 71-72 UCLA team had a record of 30-0. In 1973, Bill was named the top amateur athlete in the United States of America. When he signed with the Portland Trailblazers to become a professional ball player, he signed the largest contract for a new player at the time in American team sports history. During his career in the NBA, Bill Walton won 2 championships, was a MVP in the NBA, was an MVP in the championship finals, and amongst a list of records that could choke a horse, he, of course, is inducted into the Hall of Fame and was named one of the 50 greatest players ever. The other amazing thing about Bill is he's overcome some horrible challenges, and he shares that with us today. It hasn't come easy for Bill. He was as a child and as a young man, he had a big challenge with stuttering, and so imagine today he's a broadcaster, keynote speaker, Emmy Award winner, and he had to overcome stuttering. He also had to overcome a really debilitating bone condition in his feet. He spent 2/3 of his professional career as an NBA player on the sidelines due to injury. And not that long ago, he had what could have been a life-ending spinal collapse, and he has come back from that. Bill today is also the author of a book that I absolutely loved. I both read it and listened to it. Bill reads it, and so if you're somebody who likes to listen to books, it's great. But however you want to experience it, Bill's book Back from the Dead is amazing. In part, it's named Back from the Dead because of his love of music and the fact that Bill Walton is in the Grateful Dead Hall of Fame as well as being in the NBA Hall of Fame. I think he's seen over 800 shows, over 600 shows. I don't know. It's some giant number. And his love of music comes out in everything. You'll hear it in our conversation. He's also today an entrepreneur and actively engaged in helping particularly companies who are trying to do good things in our world. And so this conversation with Bill Walton is like none other on Legends and Losers. It's a magical mystery tour, a wild ride. And here he is, Bill Walton on Legends and Losers. So Bill, I'm very curious. What was better for you, being inducted into the NBA Hall of Fame or the Grateful Dead Hall of Fame?
Christopher, what a thrill and pleasure and honor it is for me to try to learn how to play bigger. But over the course of my now 65 years, I have learned a lot of life's greatest lessons, mostly from failure, but I've been part of some true greatness as well. And so in the course of those years, and I have completely changed as a human being. I mean, my life has been defined by meteoric rises to the top, right? Just bam, bam, from really young, and then incredible crashes to the bottom, all caused by orthopedic health crises. Athletics, academics, those were a piece of cake for me. That was the easiest part of my life. My problem is that my body keeps breaking down. And so I've also been cursed from the very beginning with a lifelong speech impediment. And so here I am trying to be on Play Bigger with Christopher Lochhead, who is basically a combination of Chick Hearn, the greatest broadcaster ever, and then Mike Tirico, the current guy, guys whose mouths work with their brain in perfect sync. Sometimes their mouths are going faster than their brains, and that is not me. So please bear with me. But when you ask about the Hall of Fame for basketball, when you ask me about the Grateful Dead Hall of Fame, I have learned that never rank, rate, or compare concerts, coaches, children, championships, or congratulations. Just enjoy them all. And so when I went into the Basketball Hall of Fame on May 10th, 1993, that's 25 years ago, right? I'm up there, and I had learned how to speak a little bit by that point in my life. And so we all had 5 minutes to go, to give our thanks, because in Western Massachusetts, the bars, they close early, and everybody wanted to get to the bar quick, right? So I'm the last guy. We go by alphabetical order. We had an incredible class of Dr. J and Ann Myers and Calvin Murphy and Dan Issel, Uljana Seminovich, the 7-foot Russian woman who never lost a game, Dick McGuire, Walt Bellamy, fantastic class, right? And I get up there last. We all got 5 minutes. And at the 16-minute mark of my 5 minutes of allotted time, the guy from the NBA in the back of the room, Brian McIntyre, just a legend, runs the whole communications and PR department for the NBA for years. He stands up and interrupts me mid-sentence and says, "Come on, Walton, you're the most injured player ever. 14 years in the NBA, you missed 9.5 full seasons. Your speech is lasting longer than your career did." And so I wrapped it up, and we all had a great time into the night long. Oh my gosh, we welcomed the sunrise that day. But then on the summer solstice, June 21st, 2001, at the Grateful Dead offices in Marin or Sonoma County. It was right on the line there. I think it was in Novato at the time, because they had moved around. After Jerry died in 95, things changed and everything changed. And one of the great things that I loved about your book was phenomenal, and it's completely changed my life, Play Bigger, but that willingness to embrace change. And that's one of the things that athletics prepares people for, because in life, things go wrong. In life, things collapse. In life, you've got to be ready to say, wow, okay. And, I love history, and I love biography, and I love adventure, and I love incredible accomplishments. And you sort of put it all together there in Play Bigger. But one of the recent books that I read, and I'm really hoping, Christopher, that you take all those book titles and authors in your book, Play Bigger, and just make a list of them and then post them on your website. Because
that's a great idea, Bill.
Because your book was very much like this. These two books that I recently read from. His name is, I don't know. When I look at his name, I see Eric Weiner, but I read an article where he says his name is pronounced Weiner, but it's Ericweiner. And he wrote two books.
If your last name was Weiner, wouldn't you want people to call you Weiner instead of Wiener?
Well, Weiner. I mean, what's the difference?
They're both pretty bad, right? Maybe,
I learned from Coach Wooden the two sets of threes, right? Coach Wooden was this incredible teacher. I mean, very much like you. He didn't speak fast. He spoke very slow and very quietly all the time, but he was an incredibly positive guy. And I was so lucky to have him as one of those foundational pillars in my life growing up. But he had his pyramid of success, his 7-point creed that he got from his dad. And then he had his 2 sets of 3s that he really, he lived by himself, and he tried to encourage other people to do the same, which was don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, don't whine, don't complain, don't make excuses. And so when I see these guys whining, when I see these guys complaining and making excuses, I always tell them, look, I'll listen to your problems one time, but from here on out, I want to hear a plan on your path forward. What are you doing to get better? And that's what your book is about. So Eric Weiner, anyway, Eric, he writes these 2 books. I don't know the guy. It was recommended to me by my friends at Simon & Schuster. You know, I've had these, my mom is a librarian, and my mom is 91. She's still alive. She still lives in the same house we all grew up in, 65 years. They moved there when I was born, here in San Diego, and I live just 10 minutes away. Lori, my wife, and I. Lori is spelled Lori, just the most incredible angel ever. Can you imagine being married to me? Anyways, Lori is, and so
it must be a magical mystery tour being married to you.
I don't know what it is, man, but I'm the luckiest thing, the circumstance alive. And so I talk to my mom every day, and I try every time I'm in San Diego, I try to go over to her house. So it's just 10 minutes away. Lori and I have lived in our house here for 39 years. We're right on the edge of Balboa Park in San Diego. It's a dream come true. And I know you live in Santa Cruz. Nothing in I think you live in Santa Cruz. That's what I read.
Yeah, I live in Santa Cruz. Yeah.
Okay. So our house is my dream. And I try to be a dreamer, you know, and I read in your book, Play Bigger, dreamers, pirates, innovators, you know, and you know, that was what I tried to be. That's what I wanted to be. And, you know, in this world that always tries to send you in other directions. And so when I love to read, my mom was a librarian. All my great influences in life were, you know, people who were into reading and knowledge and music and facts and science and technology. And I just wish that I had known what I did have as a child, because when I was there on June 21st, 2001, and getting inducted into the Grateful Dead Hall of Honor. I mean, they were all there, and it was just so cool and so happy and so fun. And that's what the Grateful Dead has always meant to me. And so this Eric Weiner, we'll call him Weiner because I think that's what he wanted to be called, but he wrote these 2 books, and in no particular order, but this is the order that I read it in. I read The Geography of Genius, followed by The Geography of Bliss. And like your book, very short, like all of John Wooden's books, very short. I tend to like super long books where they just go like David Halberstam, you know, 800,000 pages. Just give me the history of the world in every other paragraph, right?
So you must like Dickens as well, right? Because I think
right.
He by the word,
I love
wasn't
that
he?
kind of stuff. You know, we grew up in our house. I grew up with nothing.
You guys didn't even have a TV, did you?
We didn't have a TV, no.
Did was it your mom or your dad? I remember in your book, one of them said something to the effect of, there's nothing good on TV or nothing worthwhile.
Right, that was my mom. Well, you know, my dad was not a television watcher either. My dad was the coolest dad ever. And, you know, but he had, you know, one of the challenges that I had with your book is the same challenge that I have in my life, is that I grew up in a totally non-business environment. You know, my parents were not motivated by money at all. You know, my dad, he grew up in the Central Valley. His parents were teachers. He grew up in a very small town called Taft, just west of Bakersfield, which now is a really nice place because they've been able to bring water from the mountains over to the southern Central Valley there. And so it's beautiful. I got lots of great friends there, and it's a real innovation hub there with David Higdon, who's a fantastic entrepreneur and doing all kinds of wonderful things, and the solar energy plans and the California Central Valley and the more
You've gotten involved with some of
that,
that, haven't you, Bill? If I remember correctly, you're involved with some of those businesses, aren't you?
I'm involved in all of that stuff. You know, I try to involve myself in everything good and do whatever I can to avoid nonsense at every turn.
Amen. You know, hallelujah.
And people try to drag you down, and people try to say no to you. And the great thing about our lives today, and what you point out, I mean, you trace all these different things in Play Bigger, and your buddies Al and Dave and Kevin, and how you came together, and you just addressed all these issues that we're facing on a constant basis, but the way you weave it back into the business aspects. And with me not growing up in a business environment, because my dad was a social worker by day, an adult educator by night, and a music teacher on the weekends. He went to Berkeley, was a top student there in English, and he wanted to be a writer, and he wanted to be a teacher, he wanted to be a leader. And then things changed because he ended up in Europe fighting in World War II in France and Germany. And he comes back, and he never said a word about that war, never. And but he spent his whole life when he came back trying to convince people to get along. And so and then my mom was the librarian.
So I hate to interrupt you, Bill, but
Yeah,
being at war.
Christopher,
Yeah.
I work for ESPN. Our signature show is Pardon the Interruption. So forget the pardon, just interrupt, man.
Fair enough. Good. Fair enough. It's so interesting, isn't it, how many warriors come back and become peacemakers?
Absolutely. And then I'm all about peace and love. And, here I am growing up.
How many tie-dye T-shirts do you think you have?
I don't have enough. And, but when I love your section on philanthropy in Play Bigger, and that book, it really sort of encapsulated your book, because I had no idea who you were before you and I connected in San Diego at an Oracle NetSuite event. And here I am, I'm the next speaker up, right? And I'm in the back of the room trying to figure out what I'm going to say and where I'm going to go, and all these guys who are there to hear about business and everything. And here's this big, tall, goofy, redheaded guy with a big nose and freckles who can't even talk at all, right? And you're up on the stage just going bam, 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 and directing everybody, challenging everybody, leading everybody, and you've got all this phenomenal information that you're just laying out. And I said, oh my gosh, I've got to follow this guy. It was basically like following Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Thank you, Bill.
And so I forget what your question was. You talked about, the peacemakers, yeah.
Yeah,
and so
warriors turn into peacemakers, at least the great ones.
Right, well, that, and the war and violence is the failure of the human spirit. And I've been super lucky to be able to learn from all the master teachers that I've had in my life how to get to where you want to go. And I'm adding you to my list. And I've been talking about you ever since I met you, ever since I've been able to read your book. And I talk about it on television all the time. And this guy who sits next to me, who doesn't like to read, who doesn't like facts, who doesn't like science, who doesn't believe in technology. And I just get so frustrated, because when you want to get someplace, you have to have the dream. And then you have to have a teacher, somebody who has been where you want to go. Because the surest way to find out how to get there first is to talk to somebody who's on their way back, and that's you, and that's why I'm on this show today. And then you have to be on a team. And when I see what your team has done here with Play Bigger, and I want to meet these guys, Al, Dave, and Kevin. Do you guys ever get together, or are you just like virtual friends?
It's interesting because
or are you even friends?
Of course, we're brothers, and so we love each other, and we hate each other, and we everything in between. Just
you're a family, you're a team.
Yes.
Right.
But the interesting thing is, I retired after Play Bigger came out, and God bless him, Dave and Al.
Tired.
Well,
tired. What's that? Tired.
Well,
my heroes, they go to the end. Come on, John Wooden, Chick Hearn, my dad, Jerry Garcia, Bob Dylan, Neil Young. Don't ever retire, Christopher. Just change what it is that you're doing, unless you want to just spend all your time in Santa Cruz. I can dig that, man. I've been coming to Santa Cruz my whole life. And so I still get there at least once a year, because every October, mid-October, and we want to invite you down this year, but we ride our bikes with purpose, our bicycles, from San Francisco to San Diego. And we ride our bikes for the Challenged Athletes Foundation, where we raise money to buy wheelchairs and prosthetics for people that don't have arms and legs, so that they can participate in the game of life through sports. And we got a ton of guys who are coming back from our wars, fighting for us, and they come back blown up, destroyed, and everything, and we got to get them going again. And so we get out there and we come through Santa Cruz, and it's just so beautiful. We get up there in the Santa Cruz Mountains on the Bonnie Dune, and we go up on El Pescador and up in those mountains, and then we go on the ice cream grade and then the Empire grade, and we come cruising down, and we stay in the Chaminade Hotel looking out over the bay, and it's just spectacular. And then when I was in college, one of my great friends, and my great friend still today, Greg Lee, who was the key to our team at UCLA, he got really frustrated and really bored with Coach Wooden, because Coach Wooden ran everything through me. And, that was the decision that Coach Wooden made. And Greg Lee, all the other guys, they came in with huge dreams of their own, but then they sacrificed. They sacrificed because Coach Wooden said, look, if we're going to go and get it all done, we're going to go through Bill. But anyway, my friend Greg, he, in addition to being a fantastic Hall of Fame basketball player, he picked up beach volleyball. The culture, the lifestyle, and Santa Cruz is a mecca of beach volleyball. Greg's now in the basketball, volleyball, and tennis Hall of Fame. That's what a great athlete he was. And then I remember, in all the years of being a deadhead, I've been a deadhead since 1967, since I was 15 years old, right? And it's been the greatest ride ever. And when the Jerry Garcia band would pull into Santa Cruz, are you kidding me?
It must have been crazy.
It was the coolest
the dead in Santa Cruz,
ever.
right?
Santa Cruz in those days, Santa Cruz today is a really big town, and there's traffic and there's development and everything. But back in the 70s and the 80s, man, this was like, yeah, California, hippies, beach, redwoods, let's go, right? And so we'd go to the concerts, we'd just show up, right? And either the Santa Cruz Civic Center or Civic Auditorium, I don't know what they call it, but it's just downtown
Santa we just Cruz. Call it the Santa Cruz Civic, yeah.
Right.
Actually, do you know, Bill,
very
by chance?
Small.
Yeah, it is
very small, right? And so it would just be so peaceful, because the Jerry Garcia band was different than the Grateful Dead. It was quieter, and it was not the crush and not the overwhelming crowd, and it was just, you could just breathe and you could relax and open up and just spread your wings and open your heart and open your soul and just let the music just come right in, and then we'd just drift and dream, and the show would be over. Who knew what time it was? And I'd go up and I'd say goodnight to everybody, right? I'd say, see you at the next show, Jerry. And then Big Steve Parrish, who kind of ran the show for Jerry all those years. Please check out his book, Home by Daylight, right? Or something like that. Steve Parrish, Home Before Daylight. And when I read Steve's book, this is a different book, Steve, than your book. And so I said, so Steve, what did you tell your mom when you wrote this book? Anyway, Steve would always come up to me as I'm kind of walking out into the middle of the night. And he'd say, Bill, you okay? You going to be all right? And I said, Steve, I'm with the band. And then I'd go out there, and who knew what time it was, right? But by this time, the fog was in, just deep, low fog. And everybody is walking out saying, wow, did you just see and hear and feel and live and breathe what I just did inside with Jerry and the band and John and Dave and Merle and all these different musicians? It was just fantastic. And Gloria and Jackie, the singers. And then because there was in the world of the Grateful Dead, you see the same people year after year, and there was this incredible blue.
It's like a giant traveling tribe, is it not?
Right. It's like the NBA, but it's different. But there's so many similarities, and the family and the tribe that you talk about, that you live in your world, with all these remarkable business titans who have just changed and shaped our world. And my world was the Grateful Dead. And so I'm there and I'm standing in the fog in the middle of the street. And, who knows what time it is, 2, 3, because Jerry, he stopped when he wanted to stop, pretty much like this show here, right? And so this night, man, I'm looking out through the fog and through the glowing street lamps in Santa Cruz, right? And I look down, and there's this big vehicle coming right down, just really slow, right down the road. And it was one of the Grateful Dead tribal buses, man, that was painted so cool. And it had all these gold artistic designs all over it. And it had all these little artifacts and emblems from years from a
So
lifetime
there was
on
no
tour in
mistaking it
Santa
was
Cruz.
them, Bill. When they rolled into town, it was no mistaking who it was.
It was the Grateful Dead. It was the Jerry Garcia band, and it was the coolest thing ever. And we love Jerry and what he did for all of us. He did what you continue to do, and that is to provide hope, to provide the dream, to provide opportunity, and ultimately to give purpose to our lives. And so what you have done in terms of the structure of your book and coming out with Dave's 3 questions and all the different things that go on into making these companies, because we have to have jobs, you know, we have to have businesses, we have to have an economy that's driving, but producing good things. And that's why when my dad came back from the war, that's why what you do, that's why what Jerry and Bob Dylan, who's still out there doing it, and Neil Young, and everybody's talking about peace, and everybody's talking about love, and that transitions into an economy, a green economy based on doing positive things for our earth. And we have to keep going around and generating our electricity from renewable sources, taking care of the waste that we create, eliminating that waste so that we can have the clean air and the clean water that's going to allow us to continue to thrive. And don't take away our children's day, man. Mother Earth, listen to Neil Young's most recent, or one of his recent albums. But the thing about this great about these guys, they just keep coming out with this stuff. And I'm the luckiest guy in the world with that music. It just vibrates right through. And as I try to dream about how to play bigger, imagine, you know, that was John Wooden's whole deal, was play bigger.
Really?
I'm thinking when I'm reading this book, this guy is a John Wooden student. This guy must have played for John Wooden. And
wow. Thank you.
Like Wooden had this most remarkable and amazing life, right? He grew up with nothing on a farm.
Is he the most influential person in your life other than maybe
He's
your
one of them.
parents?
I don't rank all these people.
Yeah, of course. I'm sorry. I shouldn't put it that way. But
it's fine.
I remember when we first met, Bill, like, a lot of your talk was actually about Coach Wooden.
Right, because here was a guy who grew up with nothing on a farm, with no electricity, with no plumbing, no running water, had nothing. But his mom took the rags from the family's clothing and she sewed a basketball for him. And he went out against the barn in Indiana and threw this ball up there. And he went on to become the first great player. And then there was no NBA in those days. There was no professional basketball. But because of him, because he was so good and so entertaining and so interesting to watch as a player, that they created these barnstorming programs. I mean, pretty much like a road show when you're out there trying to raise money, right? And for a company.
Like exhibitions of the awesomeness of basketball.
The awesomeness of life, which was basketball was his vehicle. The same way that business is your vehicle, communication, the same way that all the guys you talk about in Play Bigger, right? They have their ideas. And what I loved about your books, I mean, every different page was like, wow. So I'm taking notes and trying to figure it all out without having the background of you in the world of business. And then you started talking about the challenge is to be different, not to be the same and better,
yes,
but to be different. And that's what John Wooden was. And then his life changed because he got hurt after he set all these records playing basketball, and he went and became a teacher. Just like you're a teacher, and that sense of being one of those guys in my life, and the incredible good fortune of the harmonic convergence of him being in Southern California with Chick Hearn, the two people who are responsible for why basketball is popular in this golden paradise that we live in. I don't know what the weather's like in Santa Cruz today, but
gorgeous.
It is perfect here in San Diego. I mean, if you were here in San Diego today, you would say, I am never leaving this place again. Oh my gosh.
So I got to ask you, what is it about?
So we got the path, right?
I
was trying to get to the path, and after you have the dream and the teacher and the team, because nobody makes it to the top alone, you have to have the culture. And that's where you talk about the point of view and who we are, what we stand for, and where we're going. And that culture, you've got to buy into that. And I love the way you just said, look, man, if these guys in your company are not bought in, they're not totally there, just get them out of there right away.
Yeah, fire them.
And fire them, yeah. I mean, then slow to hire, first to fire, right? And so
yeah, exactly. Very wise advice.
And then the foundation that you have to have, and and when I see you, I mean, I have no idea how old are you, like 35 or 38 or what? I don't know. I'm 65, and I'm all broken down. But when I saw you present, you were a volcano. You were a comet. Just you were an exploding star, a quasar across the sky. I mean, John Barlow and Robert Hunter could have written a song about you. In fact, they probably did. But here was this, this guy that it was just so direct and so focused and so concentrated and so enthusiastic and so passionate and so able to deliver that message. Because with that foundation, the strength of the team is the strength of the individual, and then that drives you right into those elements that make success. Because when you talked about the guys who were in the war to come back to become the peacemakers, I mean, that was UCLA, that was UC Berkeley, that was the Grateful Dead, that was my life, that was my dad. But we know what causes failure. Failure is caused by lack of honor, selfishness, greed that leads to anger, hatred, and ultimately violence, right? But what causes success? Sacrifice and discipline. Sacrifice to see a greater goal, a greater purpose, and saying, hey, man, I'm with those guys, and I'm going to do whatever it takes so that we as a group, we as Californians, we as human beings on this planet, that we can make it better, and not just for us, but for as many other people as we can. And then
could you expand upon what you mean by lack of honor? I find that was
lack of honor. People who lie, people who cheat, people who steal, people who are criminals, people who do all the negative things that we see every single day that's coming out of our government leadership, if you can even call it, if those two things, because the people who are out there right now, they don't believe in government. They don't believe in leadership. They believe in filling their own bank accounts, and that's selfishness and greed, and that is lack of honor. People who you cannot believe a thing they say. You cannot accept that they are concerned about anything else other than the size of their bank account. And nothing could be further from the truth in my own life, because like, I'm a hippie. I'm a hippie from San Diego. I grew up on the beach. We get dressed in the parking lot, right? And so I go to UCLA, and I have the time of my life. This is absolutely perfect. We got a scholarship check once a month.
You did bump heads with Coach Wooden quite a bit, didn't you?
On a constant basis, because I always wanted to know why. I always wanted to know why he was this little old man from Indiana. And I was 17, 18, 19 years old at the time. And my life was perfect, right? But I always wanted to know why this guy could tell me when I had to shave, when I had to cut my hair, and what clothes I had to wear.
Here's the thing I'm
curious about. And why Nixon was president, and why we were in Vietnam, and why the cheerleaders couldn't be in my hotel room on the road trips. And then, so here I am.
Hold on a second, Bill. I'm curious about this, because one of the fascinating things in your book, which, by the way, I got to tell you, I loved it. I read it. You were kind enough to give me a copy. And then I thought, I want to make, I'm a dyslexic person. And so what really helps me is I make notes and I underline things and all that. And I thought, well, I'm not going to, write in the copy that you so graciously signed for me. And so I got a second copy, so I could make.
I'll send you another one, Christopher. It's okay. I'll send you another one.
It's okay. I can handle the $20 on Amazon or whatever. And because I'm dyslexic, especially with a book like yours that I really want to get into, I buy the audio book as well. And
I don't listen to audiobooks.
Why not?
Because I like to go back, and I don't know. I love technology and I use technology. Technology has saved my life, and technology is going to allow us as a species to continue because technology allows us to reduce consumption. And when we reduce, we have so many people on the earth, 7 billion, right? And that's a lot. And how much water do we have? How much arable land do we have? We go to China every year with the Pac-12 Conference of Champions. They don't have the arable land that we have.
That country is stuffed with people, right? When you land in
they got a ton of people, and it's growing. But their technology, man, and their commitment, and they see the green future that too many people in our country. The great thing about our country is that we live in California. I have these conversations with Yao Ming, right? Who's the coolest dude ever.
Is he really? You enjoy your time with him?
Oh, he's so young and so smart and just so he's intuitively on the right path, very much like the Grateful Dead were in the very early days, right? And they did all these things, the Grateful Dead, because they just thought it was the right thing to do. And that's what Yao Ming does constantly, right? So I have these conversations with Yao, and then you just going back and forth, and he finally just puts his hand out and stops me right in mid-sentence. He says, Bill, yeah, but you're from California, man. I live in China, and I lived in Texas. Right? And so it's different, but the fortunate aspect of our lives that we get to live in California, the promised land. Meet me on the burning shore, knocking on the golden door, and how spectacular it is where we get to live in this beautiful place where it's always sunny and it's always warm, but now we have to use the incredible brain power that has been developed and to make the world into a sustainable place. So we're not just destroying it. And Neil Young's album, Earth, you got to check this out, man. And it starts out with Mother Earth and then the healing ways and being destroyed by the men of greed and power. And Neil's just standing up there and he's just like, yeah, I'm going to tell you how it's going to be. And I love all things Neil Young. And I'm just
how long ago did you
prouder to be his friend. What now?
How long ago did you meet Neil Young?
Oh gosh, I met all these guys over the course of my life. And as we go through life, you remember what you've done, but and who you did it with and what happened, but you can't remember when it was.
Because it was what it was like when you first met him.
Well, it was a dream come true with all these guys. I met all these guys, right? The only guys I didn't get to meet, who I wanted to meet, were all assassinated and all killed, like John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and John Lennon. Other than that, I met all the guys I wanted to meet. And it was just absolutely fantastic. And you know who I haven't met who I want to meet is Roger Waters. But you know what? I'm at the point in my life where I don't really care if I meet him because I am meeting him through their work.
Yeah.
And when you listen to Roger's most recent album, Is This the Life We Really Want? And I listen to music all the time. When I was in my darkest space, because when my last huge collapse was 10 years ago, February 24th, 2008. And I was, my body has been broken for a really, really long time. But then it finally just got to the point where I could no longer move because my spine failed and collapsed, and I was on the ground.
You were really given some pretty compromised bones as a human being.
Yeah. Well, I am not a winner of the genetic lottery, and in evolution, and I'm one of a lot of people who are taller and everything, and some of them they get all the good stuff. That was Kareem, that was Wilt, that was Akeem Olajuwon, and a lot of them playing into, Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett's one of them. Kevin Durant, who I just spent the day with a couple days ago.
I saw your picture with him on Twitter from a few days ago.
It was fantastic. And
by the way, I got to tell you.
He loves his bike too,
Bill, I got to tell you, look, I don't know anybody at ESPN, but and of course it's awesome that you're on the college games, But in
Yeah,
my
no,
humble opinion, we need to have you back on the NBA, don't we? I
no,
mean,
no, no. I did that. I had my
I know, but
chance
it's
there.
so you are. There's nobody in the world like you,
Well,
and you make people.
and most people say thank God for
Yeah, no,
that.
no, not at all.
But
I think you're an
I love
American
what I'm
treasure.
doing. You know what,
But you
Christopher?
make people love basketball in a way that they wouldn't otherwise. You, if you're not the
I love
greatest
life.
basketball ambassador in the world, I don't know who is.
I love life, and that is a result of my parents. It's a result of California. It's a result of my very first coach. My very first coach, greatest coach I ever had.
Your high
And
school
then it's
coach,
no, my elementary school coach.
elementary school coach. Was
Yeah,
this
his
the
name was
guy I'm trying
Rocky.
to?
He was
Yes.
the fireman.
The
He was a
stories that you
fireman.
tell about him in your book are great, about how he sets everything up so that everything's perfect when you guys show up, and like his
Yeah,
level of
it was
commitment.
fantastic. And my coach Rocky, he volunteered at our elementary school for 59 years. 59 years every day of his life. And the last 59 years of his life, right? And he never took a penny. And
Incredible.
he was a fireman, and he just loved life. And when he died a couple years ago, he was the richest guy I've ever known. And and I cannot tell you today if Rocky knew anything about sports. At the time, I thought he knew everything. But what he did know, he knew what you know. He knew life and what you did at the end of your book. Because I'm always interested in how the close comes, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm a deadhead, right? And you know, and I love Bob Dylan and Neil Young and John Fogerty and Jimmy Cliff and Carlos Santana and Bruce Springsteen and the Rolling Stones and John Lennon and the Beatles and the Beach Boys and the endless list of all the guys, right? Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and the way they end, the way they start, the Rolling Stones. I mean, it's just like it's like a David Halberstam saga, right? It's like a Christopher Lochhead part 2 of Play Bigger. You know, here we are. What are we gonna do? Let's go get it done, right? And so I'm wondering, as I'm reading Play Bigger, how is he gonna end this? You know, because I'm getting closer to the end. You know, and it's just like oh my God. And then you turned it perfectly in that you said, this is not about business. This is about life. This
Yeah.
is about everything you do every single day. And that's what I love about what the Golden State Warriors do now, the best basketball team on the planet. And there was Steph Curry,
I
Mo
just
Sargent.
loved hearing you call that game, Bill. I mean, it
That
was
was
so
so fun.
exciting, you know, because living in the Bay Area, of course, you know, we
Yeah,
watch them
no.
all the time. It's been an incredible run that we've been lucky enough to witness. Every game's on TV and all that stuff. And to have you calling their game against Portland, it was all time.
It was fantastic for me. And you know, one of the frustrating things about my job is that, you know, I'm not a good public speaker, and I do
Bill,
not
that's it.
think
Listen,
quickly.
I'm not going to argue with you that much.
I'm
But
talking
on
here,
this
please.
one,
Back off. Pardon the interruption. I'm not a good public speaker, and I cannot think quickly on my feet. And so there's all this madness going around, right? There's people yelling in my ear, don't say that, Walton. Come on, we got to have a promo. We got to create a folk controversy here. Come on, man. We got to have the studio cut in. And I'm trying to think about where I'm going to go. And then all of a sudden the game's over. And I have no idea. And then I take this big deep breath and I get back to my room. I go out and I have a meal and I get into my room and I immediately say, oh my God, I forgot to say that. I forgot to go here. I didn't do this. And I just play it over in my mind. And so one of the things that I do is that as I can't sleep after the games, you know, as I'm lying there and I try to sleep, I just have a notepad right next to the bed, right? And then so when I can't sleep, I just sit up and just, man, okay, note there, note that. And then I try to incorporate it the next time. But of all the things that happened in that game, and it was an epic game, back
crazy
and forth,
game.
up and down. It was beautiful, and the Blazer Maniacs and beer and it was fantastic. But when I finally calmed down, and when it finally got to the point of, okay, you know, what really happened? Because one of the great things about the Grateful Dead and the NBA today they record everything, and there's tons of photographers, there's tons of recording equipment, so you can go back and rethink it, re-listen, and do all that stuff. But I'm lying in my bed, and it just dawned on me that the best part of that whole day, which was spectacular in every aspect, was the fact that I was sitting next to this lady, Doris Burke. And Doris was a great player in her own right. She has 7 career records for Providence where she played. She's in their Hall of Fame for playing basketball, right? And now she's calling the game with me. And how hard it is in the world to get a break, to make it, to be on the top, to be the champion, to be in that great position. And here's Doris, who's like the first one doing that as a woman in a man's game, right? And she's there doing it. And all game long, and I should have mentioned this on the air, and I just never got to it, all game long, all day long, this endless stream of women of all ages would just come up to her, and I was sitting right next to her, and they'd come up, they just totally ignore me, which is very cool. I appreciate that. They come right up to her, and they say, Doris, we just want to thank you, Doris, for empowering us and making us believe in our own lives, and just person after person, from little children, little girls, older women, middle-aged people just coming up, and it was so inspiring and so powerful for me, because that's what I love, is when other people make it, and Doris Burke has made it, and Christopher Lochhead has made it, and I want to learn how to play bigger.
Well, thank you so much, Bill.
What's your next book?
Well, you really want to know?
Yeah, that's why I asked, man. If I didn't want to know, I wouldn't ask. If I didn't want to know, I wouldn't be on this show. Come on, man.
So I hope you love it. It's we're calling it a mini book. So I don't know how long it'll end up being. I'm guessing maybe around 100 pages. So it's not a complete book. It's a short book, like you talked about.
Don't ever think that. The shortest books are the hardest books. The shortest speeches are the hardest speeches. Check out Majesty of Calmness, which Coach Wooden turned me on to through a friend toward the end of his life. Majesty of Calmness was written 100 years ago. It's a pamphlet. It's like 35 pages long, but man, it gets right to it.
I love it.
Majesty of Calmness. Like, I can't remember the guy's name who wrote it yet, but I have that sitting next to my bed, and when I'm awake at night, I have trouble sleeping.
Are you still in much pain?
I have no pain, but I can't slow my brain down. That's the problem. And see, one of the challenges for me, and this is what, the way you organized it in terms of creating the category, becoming the category king, category design, great product, great company, get rid of all the riffraff, figuring out the problem that needs to be solved that people don't even know that they have yet. On all these different things that you just keep going, right? I can't get that out of my brain. And so in my life,
am I haunting your brain, Bill? No.
I love it because you stimulated my brain, and I love stimulation. And so here, in my life, I have these huge blocks, years at a time, where I'm in the hospital. I mean, I've spent half my adult life in the hospital.
I can't, as I was reading your book and going back through your career, it really blew my mind. I mean, you were injured so much of your career.
All the time.
Do you ever think, Bill, like, if I had been able to play, like, what would have happened if you'd actually been able to play during your...
Yeah, but you can't live like that. You gotta... I try to learn from.
So that doesn't bother you. You don't. That doesn't.
Sure, it bothers me, but there's nothing I can do about it. It's like your book starts out talking about addressing failure and not being afraid to fail. And one of the great blogs that I read all the time is from this guy from basketball named George Raveling, and it's called Coaching for Success. And George has evolved. I mean, George grew up with nothing in Washington, D.C., right there, and in the mess. And then when he was a young boy, he read the newspaper that Martin Luther King was going to come and give a speech in November of 1963 on the Washington Monument, and they were looking for volunteers. And George showed up, and he was, typical George, he was there first. And so when Martin Luther King gave his speech on the Mall, the I Have a Dream speech, George Raveling was sitting he was in the third seat to Dr. King's left, right? And the speech is over. Bill Russell was there that day. They wanted Bill Russell to be up on the stage. Bill Russell said, no, I am a warrior. I am a warrior for Dr. King, and the warriors are out in the field looking up on the stage. So I'm going to be out there where I belong. And so Dr. King, he finishes his speech, the I Have a Dream speech, and then walks off the stage, right? The world is never the same ever since. And George Raveling, just a young child at the time, is sitting there 3 seats to his left, and he looks back. He's the last guy off the stage, and the notes to the speech are right there on the podium. Wow. And so George picks up the notes and goes over to Dr. King backstage and said, "Here, Dr. King, you forgot this." And Dr. King says, "I've already delivered the speech. I don't need that anymore. You keep it, son."
You have to be kidding me. No way.
To this very day. And
he still has it.
Yeah, and so all these things happen in people's lives, and that's what I love about the Warriors. That's what I love about you. When I saw you at that event for NetSuite San Diego, every single person you talked to, every single person you had a positive interaction, you changed their lives. Dr. King did that. George Raveling does that. John Wooden did that. Jerry Garcia, Bob Dylan, Neil Young, John Fogerty, Jimmy Cliff, all the guys, they all do that. Bruce Springsteen, every single time. And then when I spent that day with the Warriors, that's what they do. And that sense of hope, that sense of that all the young people, all the women that came up to Doris Burke, they just say, wow, and I'm looking for something. I want to be a part of something. And that's what you've allowed. And that's what Kevin Durant and that's what little Steph Curry do all the time. And then Steve Kerr. I mean, what a perfect coach. Steve Kerr was a ball boy for UCLA basketball when we were growing up. He's much younger. He was there. His dad was a political science professor at UCLA when I was at UCLA. But I was studying political science at the time.
That blows me away, Bill, is, and of course people sometimes forget, he was on all those Bulls teams. I mean,
oh no, it's fantastic.
What a run this guy's having, right? I mean, Steve Kerr is having one of the most legendary basketball careers or lives you can possibly imagine, is he not?
Right. So, so here's this guy, little Stevie, growing up in the Pacific Palisades, and he's dreaming about UCLA basketball, and that's what I want to do, right? And then when it's his turn, UCLA won't give him the time of day. And so he ends up, his dreams were crushed. But this guy, Lute Olson over at Arizona, who was just starting his career, just starting his program, and Lute Olson, who grew up in North Dakota and then moved to college in Minnesota, and then immediately, as soon as he got free, he came right to Southern California, right? And he was a basketball coach in Southern California, at Long Beach City College, when he met John Wooden. And then it all changed for him, because John Wooden was like you. He was out in the field.
Thank you.
He was out there delivering the message of what it takes to get to the top of the mountain. And that sense of, one of the great things about John Wooden is that, who was also had zero interest in money. His highest salary at UCLA ever was $32,500, and
wow.
But his happiness, first of all, he changed as you delineate perfectly in Play Bigger. How you have to change, because times change and knowledge changes and information changes and technology and all the different things that we use to make our lives better, that changes, and we have to change with it. And John Wooden changed. And so as he went from being the Steph Curry to being this incredible teacher for 12 young men, that's what he did. He wasn't coaching the world in those days. He coached at UC. I believe he coached for. Okay. It came to me. He coached for 40 years. He coached at the high school level. He coached at the college level, and then 27 years at UCLA. But when he retired, I was like bummed. I said, "Come on, man! You're 65 years old, and you've got so much to give." He said, "No, Bill, I've done enough." And so I thought he was just going to chill and just sit back. That guy, he became an inferno, and he went out and he taught the whole world.
Yeah.
So he went from teaching just 12 guys, and I was lucky to be one of those 12 guys. But to teaching the entire world, and his impact, his scope just became so much greater. And so I didn't know any of this until I left, because I had this perfect childhood, none of it based on material possessions. I had a bike, I had a basketball, a skateboard, and I had books, and I had a radio, right? That's all I needed. And then
can I interrupt you here for a sec, Bill?
I said you can interrupt anytime you want, man.
So the interesting thing about you saying that you had a perfect life as a kid,
right.
and you paint a very idyllic picture in Back from the Dead, and
Right.
folks and all of it. But at the same time, it's hard to believe now. You talk also deeply about the pain of being a stutterer.
Right. No, so learning how to speak is my greatest accomplishment in life, and everybody else's worst nightmare. But
How
here's
old
the
were
situation.
you when you felt like you could overcome stuttering and you could, quote unquote, learn? You had learned to speak.
I had to learn how to speak, and I didn't know. I thought that everybody's feet hurt all the time, and I thought that only the lucky people could talk, and I was proved wrong, because not that many people's feet hurt. But my feet, they don't hurt now, because they're all fused. I mean, from the knee down, I'm all one bone. I can't feel a thing down there. So if I fall over when I get up, just push me back up. Right?
So if someone kicks you in the shin, you don't feel it.
No, I don't feel that. I mean, it's just I got big stumps, but I have my feet, and and one of our, so like we're on this big bike ride one day, right? I mean, we ride our bikes, and Kevin Durant, he loves his bike. He wants to come and ride with us, and I'm just so pumped up. And so we're on this big long ride. We're riding from San Francisco to San Diego, and we're getting, we're down outside of north of Santa Barbara, right? It's a long, hot, hard day, right? And we've already ridden for 400 miles or so. And so people are starting to get a little tired. And so one of my buddies, he comes over to me at one of the stops where we're getting some fuel and some new liquids and stuff. And he comes up to me and says, "Hey, man, hey, my foot is hurting. You got any suggestions?" And I looked over at him. And then I pointed to my friend on the other side of the group. I said, "Why don't you go ask him?" And we looked over at him, and the guy didn't have any legs. And so when you are in that point in your life, when you just think it's too hard and you think you can't get this done, and you're trying to figure out how we're going to get out, and you cannot see the big picture that's painted in Play Bigger, and you're trying to figure out, and you got an incredible opponent or an obstacle or adversity in front of you like that, and if you think that you're going to just be successful because of luck, if you think you're going to be successful just because you're a big guy or just because you have some natural talent, what's going to happen when the guy you're playing against is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? What's going to happen when the guy you're playing against is Shaq O'Neal? What's going to happen when the guy you're playing against is Yao Ming? Or what's going to happen when you're playing against Jeff Bezos, or you're playing against Steve Jobs, or you're playing against all these different guys who have started these phenomenal companies who have all been able to play bigger, as you just delineate perfectly through the course of this masterful read that takes me like a Grateful Dead concert, ricocheting through the universe. And then you realize, hey, if he can do that, if Bill Walton can learn how to talk, if Bill Walton can get back up after being on that floor for all those years when he was going to kill himself because his body didn't work anymore and the pain was just so overwhelming and excruciating and unrelenting and debilitating, if those guys can do that, if Doris Burke can do what she does, if Bob Dylan is still out there at 76 years old, if the Grateful Dead, who are playing this weekend on the beaches of Cancun, Yucatan Peninsula, if they can do that, if Neil Young can stand up, if Bruce Springsteen can keep going all these years doing that, what's to keep me?
If the Stones can keep touring, right? Doesn't it blow your mind, the Stones?
Desert trip. I love tripping in the desert, man. Were you there? That was the coolest thing ever. When they did that down in Coachella, when they opened with Bob Dylan, and then they had the Rolling Stones. And then the next night they had Neil Young open and followed by Paul McCartney. And then the next night, The Who came out and stole the show from everybody. They blew it out. You better, you bet. And then Roger Waters came out and closed it down. And it was amazing, incredible, over the top, indescribable. I have never been higher in my life. It was so fun. It was just, it was like being next to Doris Burke in terms of empowerment. It was by being in presence of John Wooden or Chick Hearn, or it was being exposed to something that you did not think could be that great. Because hope and expectation, I mean, those are driving forces in my life. And, I want it to be great. I dream about it being great. I do everything I can. The way you talk in Play Bigger about the preparation to ensure that you have the greatest chance of success. And don't be just sitting there waiting for the ball to fall in your lap. Don't be sitting there waiting for the phone to ring, man. You got to have a plan. You got to have structure. You got to have organization. And when you come up against problems, you got to be able to get through them quickly and make decisions and get going and play in this great game of life. And I'm sitting there when I'm reading that, I'm saying, wow, man, this guy is John Wooden. And for me, after John Wooden has now been dead for almost 8 years, he died in June of 2010. And shortly thereafter, Halloween, October 31st of 2010, my greatest teammate ever, Maurice Lucas, he passed away. And then my dad had just passed away, and Chick Hearn had just passed away. So I lose, and Rocky and my coach had passed away, and Ernie Vandeweghe had passed away, and all these guys who gave up their lives so that little Billy could have a chance. And now, all of a sudden, I'm out there, and it's, oh my gosh. But I keep finding it, and now I found you. So don't give me your phone number, man, because I'll be calling you up in the crack of dawn and saying, hey, I got an idea. Let's go.
You call me.
Let's go on tour.
Me, you do. I'm on tour with you. Anything you want to do, I'm in.
I thought you were retired.
Yeah, well, I'm retired. I've been waiting for you. I have the time now that if Bill says, hey, why don't we X? The answer is yes. Whatever it is, I'm in.
So I love yes. It's because I am driven down. I am beaten down by a world that insists and demands qualitative binary decision making, and that is a mistake. Because people always want yes or no. Life is not about yes or no. At least my life is not. My life, I don't want my life to be no. I want to live in a world of yes. I understand now that the culture of yes is built on a foundation of no. But the life I live, I want my life to be yes, maybe, hopefully, let's go. And that's what I see in learning how to play bigger, and the way you tie it all together. Oh, just absolutely spectacular.
Bill, and first of all, thank you. And second of all, I would be very...
We didn't talk about gravity. We didn't talk about mobilization.
Oh, we didn't talk about all that.
We didn't talk about vision. We didn't talk about insight. We didn't talk about the concept of the missing. What are we leaving out? Because I know that the minute we stop this show, I'm going to say, oh, man,
we don't have to stop the show, but I do want to make sure I say
I got to get on a plane, man.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate everything you said about Play Bigger. And I also want you to know, make it clear. You said it off the top, but I can't underscore it enough. That book is a collaboration amongst four guys, four very deep.
Well, that's what it's about.
Right?
I've been part of teams, and that's my faith. I mean, that's one of the endless reasons why I love what my life has been about. Number one, it was the choice of being part of something special. That's what I wanted. And I had that. I didn't know it. I didn't know that I had
on that one, can I ask you, Bill, in your book, I was blown away. You were a young boy. I remember the stories about the transistor radio, listening to Chick.
Yeah.
And you identified UCLA and Coach Wooden at a fairly young age. How old were you when you realized you wanted to grow up and play for him?
We didn't have the television set, and there was not a lot of sports on television in those days. There was the football game on Sunday. There was no basketball on television. But I followed. See, my dad, I never shot a basket with my dad. My dad had zero interest in sports. My mom even less. But greatest parents ever. But we had the newspaper at our house, and we were fortunate enough to take the LA Times, and it was an excellent newspaper in the 50s and the 60s. And it was always a race. I'm an early riser, right? My parents would always say, if Billy would only sleep to 6 o'clock in the morning, we'd all be so much better off. But I would get up and
What
I'd
time do you
grab that
get up these
newspaper.
days?
I get up at, I force myself to sleep because I work at night.
Yeah.
And working at night is a terrible lifestyle. And, because, night is, but that, that's the entertainment world. And I don't get to do enough. All I ever wanted in my life was more. And so when I would get up, I was super lucky because because my dad's an early riser, and people in California are early risers. And you know why? Because we know that tomorrow is going to be fantastic, and we can get started. When you live in these, one of the gigantic problems that I had 3 major problems when I moved to Oregon. Number one, I had zero interest in business. And that was a huge mistake by me, but I just didn't know. It wasn't my interest. It's all my interest today. And because the business is fantastic. And you asked about doing the MBA. I love the startup world. You talk in Play Bigger about the difference between the innovation part and the harvesting part. And that was just spectacular. I want to be in the creation and the innovation side. The harvesting is fun, and it's rewarding, and it allows you to do other things. I mean, I work all the time, and I work for money, and because I know that the more money I have, the more good things I can do. The more wheelchairs I can buy, the more prosthetics I can buy, the more people I can try to help lift the burden. That's always the purpose. And the fact that so many people have helped me, and so here it was. I'm chasing this just fantastic dream, but I go up to Oregon. I have zero interest in business, and that was my fault. And so I wasn't ready for the business of basketball. I wasn't ready for people who had individual agendas about their own well-being. That was not my life. And then I had no idea how to survive in a cold weather climate. I mean, I'm from San Diego.
You probably saw more rain in your first 2 weeks in Portland than you had in your whole life, right?
Oh my gosh! And I'm just, we're back in another drought right away, and it's rained in the last 11 months in San Diego. It's rained 2 inches. The question is, are we the next Cape Town? And how sad that is. And we have to change. We have to stop burning all this fossil fuel. We have to stop. One of the great things about UCLA, what UCLA has just done they've got a scientist in their engineering department who has figured out a way to take the CO2 emissions out of burning the carbon and then take that and turn it into concrete. Take a gas and turn it into concrete, because concrete is responsible for 5% of the carbon emissions and the greenhouse gases in our world today. And with the constant building that's going on throughout the world, you got to keep building, you got to keep growing. But what's happening in India, what's happening in China, and the use of concrete all over the place, you and I are the lucky one. We get to go around and see all these places. We got to figure out new things. We got to and the people at UCLA, I'm going to be there tomorrow, and I'm meeting with the engineering department, and they're going to be sharing with me all the dreams that they have. They've got guys who are working on how to create water out of the atmosphere, and then the use of solar power for desalination here with the oceans that we have. But if we don't use the technology to eliminate the waste problem that we had, the way we keep polluting and destroying everything, I mean, we are just going to kill ourselves.
Yeah.
And I'm looking for these people who are going to save us from ourselves.
Yeah. And so today, do you think of yourself as an entrepreneur when you're in those environments?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So maybe tell me more about your kind of mindset around entrepreneurship.
Oh, man. What time does that plane leave, Laurie? Oh, my gosh. Let's see. So I'm the volunteer executive chairman of San Diego Sport Innovators. San Diego has a huge sport industry in terms of everybody wants to move here because you can play sports every day of the year outside. But they get here and they realize, hey, man, I got to have a job because I got to pay for my existence here. And so they all start these different companies. There's 1,200 sports companies here in San Diego. They're involved in everything: manufacturing, innovation, technology, consumer products, you name it, it's all done right here. And so our job is to organize this group and be an advocate to help create companies, to help create jobs, so that the entire economy here can grow.
So is it kind of like an incubator, or how should I think about it?
We do all that stuff.
Okay.
And everything that you talk about in your book, that's what we try to do.
Yeah.
You're our hero. You're our aspirational force of nature at the very top. You're the shining star that Jerry Garcia sings about, right, when the bus is pulling down through the fog of Santa Cruz.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you.
Here's this absolute ability to articulate the message, which is the ultimate and the primary focus of the leader, because you have to illuminate that path forward, show people where we're going, and that outline, show us how to get there. That was John Wooden. He wrote it all down. You have written it all down. What's the name of your new book? When's it going to be out?
It'll be out. We're targeting sort of springtime, maybe very early summer. It's a mini book, and it the folks at Forbes were kind enough to call Play Bigger the how-to guide for building the next Google or Facebook.
Right. Well, they did. You know what? I'm going to go beyond that. Play Bigger is the how-to guide for how to become the best human being in the history of the world. Thank you, sir.
Woo! I'll take it. That's incredible. Thank you, Bill. And so the new book, in the last year or so, Bill, I did that tour with our friends at Oracle NetSuite, and of course, Legends and Losers, the podcast itself, and so forth. And I, as you well know, I'd spent the better part of 30 years in the tech industry, and a lot of that here in Silicon Valley area. And so most of my life has been with what you might think of as big E entrepreneurs, in that these folks go and they raise a lot of money and they're trying to build big categories and companies and go public and so forth. Well,
category kings dominate. The three questions. If you own 85% of your market, what is the size of that market? Dave, thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave. Dave's three questions have become legendary, and certainly in Silicon Valley.
Your Dave is a lot more on top of things than the Dave that I work with. Oh my gosh. What is your category? Oh my gosh. What is the size of your potential? I love the way you explain the value of potential as opposed to the value of what has been done, because that is, never be angry or jealous about the success of say a Kevin Durant or a Steph Curry, and these guys who in one way are making extraordinary salaries, but what they do in terms of driving this gigantic pie of sports as entertainment, sports as business, and those guys, the guys at the top, the guys who you talk about in terms of creating these great categories, companies, and products, putting it all together to be the category king, they're the reason why that happens, and it's just unlimited out there, and the way that Durant and Steph Curry just keep going, and the amount of work that takes, because far too many of us think that stuff is easy. These guys who just sit there and kind of watch and kind of talk about it and stuff, doing it, oh my gosh,
it's a mind blower.
And you do it.
Thank you.
What is it, Lloyd? What time is my plane? Oh my gosh. Oh.
How are we doing on time, Bill? I got lots more I'd like to talk to you about, but how you doing?
I got to catch the plane.
Yeah.
I'd love to stay and talk. As I get to the end of my introductory comments here, I would love to move forward through this, but why don't we pick it up at a more convenient time when I'm not jumping on a plane, which is rarely. But
I would love to. No, I owe you, Bill.
Thank you, Christopher Lochhead. Thank you for teaching me life's greatest lessons. Thank you for your kindness, for your generosity, for your vision, for your sacrifice, for your discipline, for your patience. Thank you for my life. I am the luckiest guy in the world. I now have a new path forward. I now know how to try to play bigger in the game of life.
Well, Bill, I can't thank you enough. And I got to tell you, I told my wife, Carrie, talk about you a lot and how serendipitous it was we met and how much fun we had that night and our communication since then. And
we're just getting started.
Your gracious, the gracious way that you somehow managed to talk about play bigger during the games is so, and so I just tell people I have this, 6'11" legend in my life somewhat accidentally now, and it's the most random, spectacularly, you are the most random gift the universe has given me that I can imagine. And so
you have the equation wrong. I'm the lucky one. I have received it, and I have been able to receive that the vast majority of my life, and it continues unabated today because now I can stand up and say, I know Christopher Lochhead. You have a great day.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you so much,
you, Christopher.
I love you so much.
Carrie.
I will. Please say hi to Lori. Give her a big hug and kiss for me.
Please don't ever say you're retired.
Just I won't say it again.
I'm doing other things. I'm doing more important things now.
I promise I won't. I delete the word from my vocabulary. And
okay. Ask me about Chick Hearn's last breath the next time we talk.
I will.
It was unbelievable. John Wooden, the same thing. Okay.
Yes, I would love to hear those stories. We got a lot more to talk about. Look forward to spending time with you again soon. If there's ever anything I can do to help,
you've already done it.
You and your company.
We'll be right back. Yeah. We'll be right back after this most important message from our valuable sponsors.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Christopher. We love you. Bye now.
Bye-bye. Bye. Woo! Bill Walton. How do you like that? If you love this episode as much as we do here at Legends and Losers, why not share it with everybody you know on social media right now? And again, if you want a copy of our the teaser for our new book, Niche Down, write us an iTunes review, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. Write us up a review. Send a copy of that review to blackhole@legendsandlosers.com, and we will send you a preview teaser white paper for our new book, Niche Down. All right. We would like to thank Simon & Schuster's amazing book, Back from the Dead, by American icon and basketball legend, our friend Bill Walton. HarperCollins instant classic, Play Bigger, How Pirates, Dreamers, and Innovators Create and Dominate Markets. Equity Directory, the invite-only network of entrepreneurs and startup talent exchanging work for equity. If you are in the startup ecosystem, you need to be on equitydirectory.co. Our good friends at the nonprofit onelifefullylived.org. We try to help you dream, plan, and live your best life. Check us out, onelifefullylived.org. Atira Systems, stopping wildfires and saving lives. Check us out at atirasystems.com. Interview Valet, podcast interview marketing. If you're a thought leader and you want to get your leading thoughts on some podcasts, check us out at interviewvalet.com. Speaking of podcasts, if you want to do your own podcast, but you don't want to produce it, check out pursuingresults.com. We produce legendary podcasts, and they also produce Legends and Losers. Tahoe Truckee Homes. If you're looking to live full-time in Tahoe or you want a vacation home there, we make Tahoe dreams come true. Check us out at TahoeTruckeeHomes.com. And speaking of homes, if you love Santa Cruz as much as I do and you want to live here, check out Mike Block Realtor at MikeBlock.com. And Verve Coffee, the official coffee of Legends and Losers. Put some Santa Cruz in your coffee cup. Check us out at vervecoffee.com. And kiva.org, microfinance loans that change lives. If you want to spur entrepreneurship around the world and do zero interest microfinance loans, check out kiva.org. All right. We would like to remind you that today's information is provided to you solely for informational purposes, and this oddcast is the sole property of the Legends and Losers Oddcast Network, and we would love you just a little bit extra if you shared the shit out of it. We must warn you, this oddcast is clearly produced in a studio that does contain nuts. Teach basketball. Listen to John Wooden. Don't jog near a prison. Introduce two people you love to two podcasts you love. Don't forget, it's okay to pee in your wetsuit. We love you, Dandy Candy. We love you, Mom and Dad. And hey, Colin, this oddcast really ties the room together, doesn't it? Our deepest apologies today go out to Greg Clark, CEO of Symantec. Sorry, Greg, we just ran out of time for you. That's it, my friends. Be legendary, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on another episode of Legends and Losers.